You know what? While the study of finance can be a little bit daunting, if not scary, and maybe a bit arcane, seeming to only apply to the corporate world, it indeed can also help us out individually. It can certainly help us with making investment retirement decisions, purchasing a home, automobile financing, and so on. One of the earliest and most relevant decisions is, where do I put my money? Well, you got a personal account that's nominally taxable. We'll talk about that. You have deferred pensions. Maybe the employer will match it. You have IRA accounts and even a health savings account and a 529 education. We'll skip the last two. They're kind of minor. You know, a lot of people, including even some experts, will look at the different choices separately instead of the comparative whole picture. In your personal taxable account, there are actually some benefits if you own U.S. securities called qualified dividends and or capital gains. They're taxed at 15% instead of 24% for middle income holders, and that's only in a cash account. Beyond your taxable personal cash account, there is your IRA accounts and your pension plan. By the way, IRA is individual retirement arrangement, and in your pension you can now put in 22 instead of 20%, and maybe the employer matches it. It's a delayed tax. For the tax-deductible traditional IRA and the tax-free Roth, the limits are up to $6,500 a year or $7,500 if you're over the age of 50. You can fund these up until the next year's filing deadline, and the withdrawals have to start at 72 instead of 70 and a half, and that applies to traditional IRAs and to pensions if you're not working. You can fund a tax-deductible traditional IRA if you don't have a pension plan, or if you do have one, it's subject to the following limits. The Roth, regardless of pension status, are following those limits. But in the case of a non-working spouse for the traditional IRA, you use the married limits for the Roth. Here the question arises as which is better, the traditional or the Roth? Contrary to some gurus, it depends. Turns out that the traditional, after tax, if the tax rates are the same in and out, it's a push. While noting that the Roth does allow a greater set-aside, and if you're in the 1/3 tax bracket, that would be 50% more. Do note that some states do or do not have income taxes. Well, what should you do? I would place qualified U.S. securities for those dividends and capital gains in your cash account, along with, state municipal bonds, noting that federal bonds are tax-free at the local level. And I would place your fully taxable securities in those sheltered accounts. There are a lot of silly recommendations regarding Social Security. Do note that it does start at 67 now, and you do get an 8% increase, but you know what? Not recommended, because anything above 5%, the scenarios never work out. Take it at 67. Here are the states that do and do not tax Social Security. While buying a home has become more expensive, it turns out that interest rates going from 1 to 9% only cut the cost of buying a home to about half, taking into account the current portion of the tax deduction. The next largest purchase might be a car, and while the figures don't lie, the liars sure do figure. Here, this is very typical. Say you have a $36,000 car and they'll offer it at 0% financing, or knock off $5,000 at 6% financing for a price of $31,000 financed over 60 months at 0.5% per month. You know what? Turns out the costs per month are identical. See what I mean? Now, when you hit 72, no longer 7.5, you got to start taking those monies out of your pension plan if you're no longer working, and your traditional IRA, not your Roth IRA. And it turns out, say at 4%, your amounts will start to decline, but at 8, they still climb for another dozen years. Likewise, the amount of withdrawals increase for the next 10, 20 years. Now here's a cutie for you. Turns out there's a quickie rule for doing compounding. In this case, we happen to have, I did this on purpose, 7.2% compounding, and it'll double every 10 years, double again, next 10 years, double again, the next 10 years. And it follows something called the rule of 72. That is, the rate in a percent times the number of years will equal 72 if it doubles. Look at this example. Something cost us $200 18 years ago, and at 8%, it would be worth $800 today. How did I do that? Well, notice it doubled twice. So it doubled every 9 years, divided into 72, gives us 8%. Now, there's a lot of silly recommendations out there as to what you should do first. Some of the silly gurus say separate the bills. That's wrong. Use the snowball approach. That's wrong. You take the after-tax return of both debts and investments together and rank them. Here we got 3 bills and 3 investments all together now, and either it does or does not get a tax deduction. That's easy. And well, we have a pension, 6% in 12 years. There's a rule of 72 there, don't you notice? The Roth IRA, no tax deduction. Traditional IRA, remember, it's a wash, so even though it's deferred tax, we won't do the tax computation. Well, we do the analysis, noting the pension is delayed by 1/2 of the tax per the rule of 72. Now here's something kind of helpful. It's called the economic order quantity, and it's a trade-off between how much you hold in inventory versus how many trips you make. And it turns out the optimum, I got a little mnemonic here, King Tut overseas, is you take the square root of 2 times the usage times the transaction cost divided by the carrying cost. And of course, we need some computational examples. Let's say you withdraw $20 every 2 days, $3 to go to the ATM, 6% interest rate. And, well, gee, our current policy is some $540. The optimum would be $600 every 2 months, 6 times a year. And, well, gee, that's only $36. Notice the confirmation, because we had the 2 components of the total being equal. Okay, you got a horse that eats $15 a day. Whoa, Nelly! Cost to go to the feed store is $8, interest rate 6%. The optimum would be $1,200 every 80 days, or 4.5 times a year. And notice we confirm it, total would be 72. And notice the 2 different portions of the equation confirm our analysis because they're equal, keeping you up to date with Dr. C.